Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about Cold Days because I recently finished this book for the second time, and I know that we're skipping a bunch of books, but this is one that's freshest in my mind, and so this is the one that you're going to get right now. And this video is also just going to be my ramblings about the different connections that I found and what I thought was interesting in this book. Also, spoiler warning for literally everything that happens through Battleground, just because I don't think that I'm going to be able to stop myself. Including this book, there's like 4 books until the sort of stopping point where we're waiting for 12 months anyways. So if you haven't read the entire series, just like power through the next couple stuff, come back. There's a lot that goes on in this book, and we're just going to begin. So Cold Days picks up where Changes in Ghost Story end. Ghost Story was this kind of weird in-between place while Harry sort of dealt with the consequences of his actions at the end of Changes. And now we finally have Harry back doing his like wizard stuff. And Harry back to normal, except I guess his new normal instead of his old normal because changes happened, is really freaking fun. He starts out and Mab is basically trying to train him to be the Winter Knight by giving him a lesson every day. And those lessons are trying to delete him and trying to do what he literally couldn't do to himself the last couple books. Harry's also trying to find his place in the Winter Court. He has this gal named Sarissa who's helping him with his physical therapy. He has a snazzy, new, kind of more evil, tough version of Mister in the Malk. And that Malk is none other than Cat Sith, which is also pretty cool. And Harry's also turning into the bad guy, and it is super obvious that he is going like full Sith Lord over here. Harry's getting much thinner. He's also getting stronger. He's sort of looking kind of scary and scraggly and a lot of other things that just make him look scary even to the people who know him and care about him and think he's a good guy. He's still terrifying to them, and it's really interesting to watch because he keeps trying to convince everybody that he's not a villain, and everybody's like, Lloyd Slate wasn't a villain either at the beginning. Yuck. And Harry's just like living in denial, and it's beautiful. I strongly think that this whole series is going to be showing Harry becoming the villain because those who survive long enough end up becoming the bad guy instead of the good guy just because they're so corrupted. But then we have that whole conversation that he had with Uriel right before he took the deal with Mab, where he tried to go to Uriel and the Carpenter's boss first and was like, hey, I'll give you my services if you give me my legs back. And he's like, we can't do anything, free will, yada, yada, yada. But don't worry, there's redemption later on. And so I definitely think that Harry is going to end up being the bad guy and then get redeemed. He might not be redeemed publicly, but that's sort of where we're going if you're looking at this whole thing from like 1,000 feet. I don't know. For some of these, I wrote down page numbers, and then later on when I switched to audiobook, I switched to chapters. So in my copy of Cold Days, at least on page 186, is where they talk about how Merlin made Demon Reach, and I thought that that was really cool. Harry has this entire conversation with the spirit of Demon Reach, and at first I thought that there might be some sort of like special code in the answers because Demon Reach was giving him these like very short answers. And then I figured out that he was just being literal the whole time, because this is about the point where Harry figures out that there's scary stuff in Demon Reach and that it's actually a prison at the bottom. And the minimal security people there are Nagloshi. And those guys are freaking scary. And I don't even want to know like the guys that are the sizes of houses. Like they're enclosed in these crystals. And it's very obvious, and they literally come out and tell us it's that obvious, that if these guys get let out, it's the end of the world. It's bad news. That sort of sets us up for later when all the outsiders try to come and have that little prison break and try to break everybody else out. He also had this throwaway line about how the Catholic Church was created by the Merlin, or at least like nurtured by the Merlin in order to protect knowledge. And that makes me think back to another character that we see a lot, Father Forthill. And I honestly think Father Forthill deserves his own video. Tell me in the comments down below if you think so. But I think that Father Forthill is at a minimum like helping the Venatori. There's a whole secret war thing that involves like the Venatori and the outsiders, and as the enemy of course, and the archive. And basically they're trying to get everybody to forget all these things so that they don't have power anymore. I feel like this is one of those series where you just have to have the outside context from the short stories. I'll get around to doing more of those, but for now, just like trust me. And if I'm getting some of this stuff wrong, like tell me in the comments. Y'all have some of the greatest discussions down there. I also think it's funny how Demon Reach's spirit, when it's talking to Harry, kind of gives him one-word answers, most of the time like Mac. I already gave y'all the spoiler tag. Actually, no, I think we find out in this book that Mac is something called a watcher. There's something behind that. Like that's an important drop. Another person that we see that isn't as he appears is Kringle. So Kringle is like this whole other mantle, and he's actually Odin and we find that out at the end. But it's just kind of funny how when Harry's like at that party in the beginning of the book, he meets the Earl King, Eldest Gruff, and Kringle. And I feel like this helps us see that there are positions for people that aren't just straight up the she or straight up like these beautiful, scary fairy creatures. It also gives us sort of a future look into how Harry could handle the mantle. Like he could let it completely take over him like it did Lloyd Slate. It could give him like something that he is in control of sometimes, like he's the Winter Knight sometimes, and other times he's himself, and other times he's something else. It just adds like another dimension. But how do you get your mantle under control like that? I think that that's something that we'll figure out a little bit more as the book goes on. Going back to the Infinity War and all the Venatori and knowledge stuff with Father Forthill, I also thought it was really interesting how Demon Reach refers to a lot of the prisoners as nameless things. I think that the whole nameless one thing connects back to the Venatori and the Infinity War and what I said about Father Forthill and the knowledge that the Catholic Church is trying to keep up. And the Infinity War is basically trying to do the opposite. So these prisoners being called nameless things by the spirit of Demon Reach kind of speaks to that, because as you take away their name, you take away their power. In contrast, Harry's sort of building up his power and building up his minions, if you will, by giving them names, giving them positions. Hell, every time Toot Toot gets a new title, he seems to grow a couple inches. So I kind of think that that's what's going on here. Harry knows how to make an entrance at his party. He ends up taking out 2 of the Fae by freezing them and then using force to shatter them into a million different pieces. And they're not getting put back together again. I also thought it was cool how Sarissa comes into this being very, very scared and kind of a meek character. Her advantage is that she knows the trap that she's walking into, or at least she knows that there's going to be a trap. And she's probably had some sort of training or experience that she's lived through that's given her a crash course in how to deal with winter court stuff. And so she's able to trick this one creature that she could never beat in a fair fight into drawing blood. And this gives Harry the opening that he needs in order to do the smashy ice thing. After this encounter, Mab dances with Harry, and this is one of the sickest scenes I've ever seen in a Dresden Files book. You have Harry dancing with Mab of all people to an orchestral version of 45 by Shinedown, which is a very, very sad song. It's basically about how your life is in ashes and you're moving forward and things have changed, and it's just so fitting for where we are in this story. Also, I think that this calls ahead to the end of the book where you have a changing of the guards with the ladies of winter and summer. We all know that this particular weapon has been a fixture because Harry doesn't really have his staff. It's also a weapon or very similar to the weapon that took Harry out at the end of Changes, and it just seems like this particular song that Harry and Mab are dancing to, especially as Mab like gives her order and stuff, is very fitting and ties things together, because you think that it's talking about his past, but it's actually talking about his future at the same time. On page 224, Thomas tells Harry about how Laura was kind of pissed off that both Harry and Marcone had declined her advances, and apparently this is something that doesn't really happen a lot. It's happened twice in the same century, and that just like boils her over. So we know that Laura is mad that she can't have power and use her sexy vampire mojo over these very powerful men. We really don't get a lot of Laura, except for the books that she's in, and even then she's always playing some cat and mouse 3D chess game with us. I always feel like we get through a couple layers and then we get to the main plot, but there's like 2 or 3 layers deeper that we could go, and then we get to what Laura's actually doing. So I thought that that's a snippet where it just came out and said that was pretty funny. Getting ahead of myself to Battleground, I think that Laura's finally figured out a way to get Harry to get with her. And I also think that it's kind of funny that Laura was Harry's like second choice for how to go out, because he thought, hey, if you're going to go out, at least have a good time. And I think that Harry might not have been able to come back if he had gone after Laura and decided that that was how he was going to say farewell to the universe. And in chapter 20, I don't know if this has been called in yet, but Thomas owes Cat Sith a favor for being rude to him in his home. I love how Thomas basically remembered his manners, was like, oh crap, I need to be polite to this guy or else I'm going to cause major problems. And it'll be interesting to see how Thomas gets called in on that favor. Right now, at least, I don't think that Cat Sith was the one that put him in jail with the Svart Elves going into peace talks, but don't know, and that might be a fun theory to think of later. Tell me in the comments down below if you have an opinion on this. Also, I was reading Bombshells, and this is for a completely other video. Justine, Andy, and Molly having to save him from being in prison with the Smart Elves is kind of similar to what happened later on, so I'm trying to figure out if there's some sort of connection with that. I also had a thought about Rudolph. It's completely possible that either like the White Court or Marcone's organization owns him. We've known for a while that he has like nicer suits than he's supposed to. He got caught with the wrong councilman's daughter, and so he's definitely like owned by somebody. I keep trying to figure out which one, because for the longest time I thought it was the Reds, but his life hasn't completely fallen apart, and I don't think he's smart enough to keep it from falling apart, so we'll just have to see. So Harry has a conversation with Vadarung when he's like, how the hell do I save the world? And I feel like this one has more layers than what I was able to pick up, even though I read it like 5 times. At one point, Harry's like, so what about Paradox? If I go back in time and delete my grandfather, am I even born? And Vadarung's like, well, for one, if you tried, he'd probably beat you senseless. So Vadarung knows. And Vadarung was also involved in the whole council changes thing, so we know already that he's probably besties, or at least on respectable terms, with Ebenezer. But to be somebody who knows that Ebenezer has family and that that family is Harry, that's a big, big secret. Vadarung also says that paradox is kind of overblown, but that creating a paradox creates a different kind of apocalypse. And then that goes back to something that we've heard from 2 other people in this series, one of them being Nicodemus, that apocalypse is a state of mind. And I just kept coming back to that entire idea. So getting ahead of ourselves and going to Mirror Mirror, which I'm sure is what all of y'all are here for. If apocalypse is a state of mind, what gives us the apocalypse is some time travel mojo, which could happen in Mirror Mirror. We don't know if that's going to be the episode where Harry does time travel, or if this is just Mirror Universe dealing with the fallout of other time travel. What happens in this Dresden Files universe when you have a paradox is that it splits out into 2 universes, one where you succeeded and one where you failed. So in Harry's case, if he went back and deleted Ebenezer, there would be one universe where it worked and one universe where it didn't. I really don't want the Dresden Files to be like that obvious, where Harry's like, oh, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go back in time, I'm going to whack Ebenezer. That's going to be somehow related to the Mirror Mirror universe. Either Harry's like all Dark Lord because he's whacked Ebenezer and the council's after him, or Ebenezer is actually Cal. Oh, that just could get into so many different places that I don't want to go because I like Ebenezer as a character. Yeah, it's like Ebenezer, Michael, and Molly are probably like my favorite Dresden Files characters, but that's not important. And that would also mean that if creating a paradox sets off an apocalypse or sets off a mirror universe, then maybe Mirror Mirror could, I don't know, be the point where we start getting into the big apocalyptic trilogy. But I could have sworn that we had books to go through between the big apocalyptic trilogy. I cannot say apocalypse. Apocalypse is not in the state of my mind, I guess. So we'll see. Another fledgling tinfoil hat theory that I had from this conversation with Vadarung is if the outsiders are from the outside of our universe, then could they be from another universe? A mirror universe? A universe created because of a paradox splitting stuff up? Huh? I'm way more proud of that than I really should be. But I'm just trying to think, if the outsiders are these big scary villains, could they actually be from a universe where everything went to hell, trying to come back into our universe to keep everything going to hell? That would really round things out where Harry thinks that he's being the hero the entire time, like trying to save the world, where actually like our world needs to end in order to save multiple other universes or something like that. I don't know. I think that that's a theory that needs to have more stuff looked into it. The level of arrogance that you have to think that you are the one universe and that the other ones are just trying to destroy you and they don't have a good reason for it. That's the kind of arrogance that I expect from wizards, which I feel like we're in the right company, because the White Council has that rule about not letting things from the outside in. And I think that this might tie all together, but I also kind of think that I don't know what I'm talking about on that. So let's table that for now. I'm not sure if I remember the context, but in chapter 27, Harry comes right out and says, what am I going to be like after 12 days, 12 months, which is the name of the next book. I think that Harry is really concerned about his villain arc and where he's going with that. And I think that he's specifically calling it out, and that maybe that this is a really blatant hint, and Jim Butcher just trying to mess with us at this point with it being so blatant, that Harry at the end of 12 months is going to be a complete and utter monster. I don't know, maybe him and Laura are meant to be together. Harry has a really interesting conversation with Titania where he basically sort of remembers now that he's a parent and he can understand her frustrations with him a lot more. Dresden took her baby girl from her and it was the right thing to do. But at the same time, even though Titania knows that Aurora was gone at that point and that this had to be done, she did not want it to be done because of love. And Mab is kind of the same way with Maeve at the end of the book. She shows up in black. She shows up knowing what's going to happen and what she's going to have to order Harry to conclude, because she already ordered him to do it at the beginning of the book. But now that Harry is who he is, sort of like the monster that he's allowed himself to start becoming because he wanted to save his own little girl, it's just, I don't know, there's a word for this. But it seems like Harry's in a position now where in order to save his little girl, he also had to be the one, maybe not directly, but over the course of this entire adventure, had to be the one to take others away. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that with Maggie, if that ever became a thing. I really hope that they're not setting up where he would have to do that to Maggie. I am definitely team middle grade series about Maggie and Mouse in magic school in Chicago. I want that to be a thing so bad. And quite honestly, if Kumori turns out to be Maggie, I am going to be so mad. She is one of the few people that is tall enough to do certain things that Kumori can do, who would know about the skull, and I don't know. I'll make a video on why Maggie might be Kumori, but I also kind of don't want to because I really don't want it to be her. Sometimes going into detail, a lot of times going through these books with a fine-tooth comb is very, very emotionally and mentally draining, but now that I sort of have my life under control and can enjoy it again, it's a lot of fun. When Harry goes and visits the mothers, I'm going to talk about Mother Winter because I feel like her part was a little bit smaller, but also gave us some throwaway lines that mean things that are important, which I think is one of Jim Butcher's favorite things because it's a blink or you'll miss it moment, and then it turns into like a moment. We get the one that everybody talks about, and that is Mother Winter's walking stick and how she's mad because she can't find it or she lost it. And I'm pretty sure, and like the entire internet at this point is pretty sure that her stick is the Black Staff. And I think that that's pretty much confirmed in Peace Talks and Battleground, where McCoy basically like tries to use it, and then you see Mother Winter's face in the clouds, and it's super creepy. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. But then Mother Winter also drops something that I wasn't paying attention to the first time I read the book. And apparently it used to be her job to name the knights. And she was kind of peeved that Mab was like picking the wrong knight or something. And I just thought that that was hilarious. But also it kind of shows how the power dynamic of what responsibility belongs to which queen can change. And I didn't think you could do that because the mantles of the queens seem very, very stationary. They don't care who has them because they make they basically like try to mold the person to the mantle instead of the person molding the mantle. And they just need a warm body to mold and to do the job, not necessarily caring about the personality. It's just literally the closest warm body. The conversation with Mother Summer is also very interesting. I know that a lot of my notes are basically like, Harry talks to this person, this is what it means. But I don't know. A lot of times the Dresden Files is very heavy on battles, and those are really well written and I enjoy them. But getting these interpersonal moments, especially not having read the book for like 2 years, brings a lot of extra stuff to the table that I really didn't think about the first couple times I was trying to make videos or do things on the series. So going back to Mother Summer. Mother Summer does a couple things. First, she basically tells Harry that he has a chance to not let the mantle consume him and to have some sort of control over it. Okay, maybe not control over it, but at least stay himself and not lose that. She also shows us the outer gates. And I know that there was a gatekeeper, so theoretically there were going to be outer gates, but you just don't realize how important that is. And basically at the outer gates, you're keeping the outsiders outside, you're sending soldiers to fight and stuff, and that's mostly Winter's responsibility. And Winter is a lot more powerful than Summer, but it's sort of the borders within Fairy of where they have to keep everything even. And Summer keeps Winter from completely overriding everyone else. And you're like, well, if Winter and Summer are technically on the same side in some weird way, why would they need to worry about Winter overriding everyone else? And it's because the gatekeeper, even though he has that eye and can do stuff to try to tell if the adversary has gotten to anybody, if anybody's infected with all that outsider mojo, it's not a failsafe, and he can't do that with 100% accuracy. So sometimes infected individuals come back beyond the wall. And when that happens, you have opportunities for really bad things to happen. And I guess it's like in a zombie movie. So if Winter gets infected, or enough of Winter gets infected, or the outsiders get let in, then who's going to protect people now that the group protecting everybody is now on the dark side? And I guess that's what Summer's for. And Summer's also kind of gnarly. Just thinking back to being in that cottage, all those jars of diseases. Yeah, those are freaking terrifying. 10 out of 10 do not want to do again. But even for the similarly, unsimilarly matched status of the two fairy courts, Titania can still drag Mab into oblivion with her. And I just imagine Mab and Titania hugging and then going through the outer gates. And I don't know if that's exactly what would happen, or if it's one of those things where these two sisters would be just like, okay, either both of us can be here or none of us can be here, and that's what we need to do. And then them go over to the outsiders and do whatever they need to do together. I don't know if that's something that we're going to have to see. I don't know like what would happen with their mantles. Would Sarissa and Molly then inherit the two mantles, or would the mantles remain with Mab and Titania on the other side? I'm not sure how that would go, but I think that this line, it kind of seemed like a throwaway line. So it might be one of those cases where it's important in the bat, but it's not important right now. We also get to learn some more about Rashid, mostly that his eye has a disguise, and that's pretty cool. His eye is actually the material of the gate, and I guess he uses that as a way to like scan people to see if they're infected. But he also knows about Harry's family, about Margaret, about Ebenezer, which would also explain why he sides a lot of the time with Ebenezer. And I also think that the reason he's not there most of the time is because he's doing like outer gate duty, which is obviously very important and why he like rarely leaves. But it also seems interesting that he would be an ally just because of like what his job is. And we don't know, maybe him and Eb had a thing where they were friends before he was the gatekeeper. Maybe there was something else there. Hey Jim, you want to write a prequel series? Because a bunch of us read the crap out of that. I'd really like to know how all these guys became friends and stuff. Rashid also apparently has a scar like Harry's when we get to see him with his cowl off. And I don't know if this is supposed to be like a Harry Potter joke, or I don't know, has he had the same experience? Is he secretly Harry like some people on the boards think he is? I really don't know. In chapter 43, we have our first instance of Harry getting called a Starborn. And I think it's from the Earl King. He's like, "Well done, Starborn." And none of us know what that means, and the Earl King doesn't bother to tell him because he's on the wild hunt and having a grand old time, so who cares? I feel like this is going to be one of those things that they talk about more in 12 months. I also think that Listens to Wind is toast because he did the whole Ned Stark thing of being like, in 12 months I will tell you everything. And that sounds an awful lot like when Ned Stark was like, the next time I see you, Jon, we'll talk about your mother. And Jim likes to mess with people like that. And that would just seem like something I would absolutely expect from him. I shouldn't talk about him like that. I've never met the guy. I just like his work. He seems like a nice person in the press. So I'm going to keep being oblivious. Actually, I'm not sure if I would ever like want to meet Jim Butcher because they say like don't meet your heroes. And I would either A, make a complete and utter fool out of myself fangirling and being weird about it, or 2, he would be a jerk or something, and that would just break my heart. Like, I don't know if I could continue this channel if I met Jim Butcher and he ended up being a jerk. I don't want the magic of the series to be ruined by like a bad encounter. So chapter 51 is one of the parts in the story where Maeve just starts to be way too Maeve. This is the part where she injures Mac, and then she turns to Justine and gives a line that I didn't think anything of. It's another one of those throwaway lines that means a lot. And in retrospect, this was a big honking flashing light of what was going to happen at the end of Peace Talks and Battleground. She turns and basically tells Justine that Justine is super cute and that they should have a conversation later because Justine will start to see things Maeve's way. And we all know that Justine got infected, and oh my gosh, that, like, her almost getting to Demon Reach is, oh my god. But it was also a really good move to infect Justine because Justine is so close with Lara. Lara's Venatori. I don't know if she was Venatori to work against her dad to get more power, or if she legitimately cares about stuff. If I had to guess, my money would be that Lara cares about Lara, that this is just her way of getting power, but she's also super old. And so she might have gotten dragged into this and actually believe in the cause. If you have an opinion, comment section. Another tidbit of information that could go nowhere but could be important later is that Sarissa gets mad at Maeve and she's like, oh, did me getting my degree and moving out ruin your life? What about me saving a mortal man that you let survive after the first night? Now, there's a short story that I haven't read that involves Molly as the Winter Lady and Carlos. And that is one of the big reasons why he's injured and not liking Harry at the beginning of Peace Talks. And I need to read the short story. I just know what happens. The mantle that Molly and previously Maeve have will fight back and try to destroy anything that tries to have certain varieties of fun time with the maiden because she needs to stay a maiden. So if Sarissa saved a guy that survived the first night, 1, who is this guy? Because he's super lucky and or powerful. 2, are we going to meet him later? 3, is this some sort of hint for later things? And 4, could this be a sign that Maeve was infected when Sarissa saved this person? My logic there is that if she was infected, maybe her mantle wasn't working the way that it was supposed to. But also we don't know like when this happened or anything, so it's probably just some tinfoil theory that goes nowhere. Chapter 52 also kind of confirms what we knew from before, that Molly was being for a potential winter-summer lady spot. She's basically been in training to be a fairy queen from the beginning, and this could go all the way back to Grave Peril. And then there's even a line in Bombshell where Leah comes out at the beginning and tells Molly that they're both in grave peril. And I just think that that's a really interesting choice of words there, Jim. You want to explain yourself? If you don't remember, back in Grave Peril, Leah was trying to bargain to get the sword back to Michael Carpenter because he loses Amarachius and it's basically like almost unmade at the party because of all the stuff that goes down. And if I'm not remembering this correctly, like, correct me in the comments. We also know for sure that Maeve is infected because she cannot tell a lie and she says that 2 + 2 = 5 while doing her best Harley Quinn impression. Mab also had a mom moment where she was sad and conflicted about the whole end of Maeve. And she gives Harry this line about how she was mortal too once. And that's another example of where the mantle doesn't completely override the person. I don't know. I felt really bad for Mab, and I never thought I would. But that moment must have been really, really hard for her. And I think that just the feeling behind that was able to pierce whatever ice shield or whatever the mantle put around her feelings, where she normally would just defer to what the mantle needed her to. But we also have this weird moment that involves Murphy. There was another thing in this end scene that reminded me of the whole Rudolph thing later on. Basically, Mab is able to remove Karen's restraints, and then Karen Murphy immediately grabs her weapon and uses it without thinking. I know that the Queens of Fairy can't take out mortals, that's why they have the knights, but they can do something that enables the mortal to do some other action, because that mortal has free will and yada yada. Okay, I don't really know if free will plays into it, but you get what I'm saying. They don't have direct control over things, but they can set it up to where it's much easier for the other person to do what they will. And any sort of reread through the series is going to involve dissecting and rereading the scene with Rudolph several times, but this just makes me want to go back to that scene even more. I do think it's important to reread Skin Game and to get through all the books instead of just jumping to Peace Talks and Battleground. Started to do that, and then I was like, okay, I'm missing a lot of the backstory with the Smart Elves that I know happens in some of these short stories that happen around this time. And I think that I'm definitely going to be comparing these two scenes, because there might be something one little line that changes my entire understanding of that, and I need to find it. But anyways, back to the whole Molly contingency plan thing. Mab said that she would have been a better fit for Summer, and I'm not quite sure why she would have wanted to get rid of Lily. I mean, Lily was kind of dumb, but at the same time, she was easy to manipulate. I guess how good that is as a skill depends on who ends up manipulating you. If it was Mab or Titania, it probably would have worked out, but since it was Maeve and Lily sort of threw in with the wrong side, she was not gonna end up getting away with this one way or another. She might have been able to survive the scene, and it was really sad, especially because Lily's hopes and dreams got stolen away when she had to become the Summer Lady. That scene was sad, but I think we all kind of hate Maeve, but what happened with Lily and her feelings surrounding everything, and her just turning into a bad guy without really wanting to turn into a bad guy, that was really, really sad. She just wanted to be a mom, and she didn't get to do that. I don't like it when people don't get to do their hopes and dreams and the things that make them feel good, because living your life for your job just sucks. We also tie up a couple other loose ends. Mab pisses Harry off by saying that Harry was training Molly to be his minion the entire time. I kind of disagree with that. She's like, oh, you put this idea of magic in her mind and then left her alone and just let the idea fester because you knew it would work out that way. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, one, Harry's not smart enough for that. Two, Harry didn't even think of Molly at all until he had to deal with everything and proven guilty. So I don't think that that was a very fair comparison. But Mab also did something really good for Molly, which was saving her from the Wardens. And I think we all understand that after what happened in Ghost Story, Harry is not there anymore. Ergo, the doom of Damocles, if you don't have your mentor and you are under that, then you get a warden at your door and it's going to be the last person you have over. So just looking at things from a story perspective, there wasn't really a place that Molly had to go and still keep her head. There's only so long that she could have kept Carlos at bay. I think that even if they had gotten into a relationship or something, it wouldn't have saved her head long term. I don't think Carlos could have avoided his duty as a warden for as long as he would have liked, even though he definitely has the hots for her. And I think Harry coming back, I don't know if it would have helped as much as we think. We might think, oh, just fill out the paperwork saying that you're alive and everything's good. I don't think that the Merlin would have really liked that. And I don't know if he would have just let it happen or if he would have used this as an excuse to get rid of a warlock. Or two. Because, he always loves his plans. And Harry was finally out of his hair. Though I know I have an entire other video about how Harry might have a secret ally in the Merlin. I don't know, there's just so many layers that Harry doesn't get to see, and it's really hard to figure out what the hell is going on with that. I also don't like making videos where I just respond to Reddit, even though I know that it's adding your own commentary and not just stealing somebody else's idea. I just don't like doing videos like that. I could make videos so much faster if that's all I did though. But Harry also stands up to Mab, even getting her in a position where, since she's on Demon Reach and has guest rights, like, something could happen. She's still technically in a prison that could imprison her if she steps out of line. And then Mab is like, finally, a knight worth keeping. And I think that's important. And I think that Mab wants a knight that can take her out, potentially, if she needs to be taken out. Because if she's dealing with all this outer gate stuff and becomes infected, she needs somebody that can do what she had to do to Maeve and then make room for the next queen who is not infected to come to power. We also get confirmation that the anathema Grave Peril, which is the dagger that Lee got from Bianca, was what ended up infecting her and infecting Maeve. The difference in why Leah ended up being able to survive, of course, is because she wanted to be helped and Maeve did not. Mab and Leah were frenemies, and I'm not sure why Leah wanted to be helped by Mab and didn't have the same allure that Maeve did. Maeve saw being infected as freeing, because she got to tell lies. She felt like she had a lot more agency over herself that honestly she hadn't had since she chose to become Fae. And so it's just really interesting to me, like, why they made the decisions the way that they did. Like, why didn't Leah just use being infected in order to get that same sort of agency, take Mab down, and then maybe assume her mantle, or maybe take Maeve down and then assume the lady's mantle and then get promoted? I don't know. There could have been something. I might just not understand how that works. We also found out that Kringle and the Earl King set things up so that Harry would be able to take the hunt from them. And so they were trying to help, but they can't just give him the hunt. And I thought that that was really interesting because it gave Harry an army when he needed an army. Also, maybe the Earl King, he definitely has his pride, and I think all fairies have to act like they'll destroy you if you don't listen to them, because otherwise they don't have power, or at least don't hold on to it for very long. But I also have to wonder if Kringle was Team Harry at Chichen Itza, was perhaps Earl King and he just wasn't using his normal Earl King powers. I don't know, maybe there's different hunting styles. We also know that the fallen ladies were laid to rest on Demon Reach, and I don't know if that's to keep them from getting resurrected. I don't know if that's like a place of respect or a place to keep them so that there's enough water around them that magic can't affect them. But I also have to wonder, now that I've read as far as I have, are Susan and Murphy interred there as well? Because it could be saving them for something during the Big Apocalyptic Trilogy. We also don't know like where Susan was laid to rest. Like Leah said to Harry at the end of Changes that it would be a place that he would think was respectable, or at least like fitting of her. I'm not quite sure what the language was, but Leah basically promised that it would be a respectful place. It wouldn't be some sort of fairy trick to put her in a place that Harry would disapprove of. But we also know that the prison in Demon Reach basically keeps the prisoners in stasis. And now that I'm thinking about it, there might be some sort of magic where it can keep their bodies fresh. I don't know. Maybe this is the part of the story where Harry actually does real necromancy instead of fake necromancy with a dinosaur. A dinosaur named Sue, which sounds a lot like Susan. Susan getting revived by Harry doing necromancy confirmed? And finally, the part that broke me at the end of the book, which is where Harry was talking to Murphy, and Murphy was like, hey, the grasshopper's into you. You should go for it. And Murphy's also like, I'm not going to live as long as y'all, and I'll be gone relatively soon. And that just twisted my heart because Murphy is no longer with us as of 3 books from now, sorry. And that just made me really, really sad to read. But also, I don't know if Murphy like knew her mortality was that short, but she definitely like knew that she wasn't going to have the lifespan of a wizard. And it's just sad because I really want to see Murphy and Harry get together. I want to see them happy. But I've seen enough interviews with Jim Butcher to know that Harry being happy is not what the series is about. If you like what I do, please hit the subscribe button and join the Caffeination. We'd love to have you. I'm going to be making a lot more Dresden Files content, and I'm also going to be talking about the books that I enjoy reading. Trying to grow a channel is not worth me restricting what I read. And so it might not be for you, but I think it's really important to read what you want and read a variety of things and not just stay in one specific niche, whatever that word is. Like, share, subscribe on all your social media. And if you think I suck at this, leave me a comment down below, and I'll try to suck better next time. Bye.